Welcome back. The United States says it's tracking a suspected Chinese surveillance balloon that has been spotted flying over sensitive sites in recent days. Defense officials said they were confident the high-altitude surveillance balloon belonged to China. It was most recently seen above the western state of Montana. A senior defense official said the government prepared fighter jets, including the F-22S, in case the White House ordered the object be shot down. But the Pentagon advised President Joe Biden against doing so for fear debris could pose a safety threat. According to U.S. officials, the object flew over Alaska's Aleutian Islands and through Canada before appearing over the city of Billings in Montana. Meanwhile, China says that the alleged spy balloon spotted over the U.S. is a Chinese civilian airship, which had deviated from its planned route. In a statement, China's foreign ministry said it was used for mainly meteorological purposes. The statement adds that China regrets the unintended entry of the balloon into the U.S. airspace. China also said the balloon had been blown off course by unexpected winds. Where earlier China said Beijing was verifying reports that the Chinese spy balloon has been flying over the U.S. for a couple of days and urged both sides to handle the matter calmly and prudently.
I'm
aware of the reports, and I'm in the process of understanding and verifying the situation. I would like to emphasize that until the facts are clarified, speculation and hype will not help to resolve the issue properly. China is a responsible country that has always strictly abided by international laws, and it has no intention of violating the territory and airspace of any sovereign country. Regarding this balloon issue, as I have just mentioned, we are in the process of understanding and verifying the situation and hope that both sides can handle it together calmly and cautiously.
Well, in the meantime, eyewitness video captured the suspected Chinese spy balloon. One local resident, Chase Dog, says he thought the balloon was a star when he looked outside of his window. Reactions from senior politicians flooded the internet, including Speaker of the House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy, calling for a Gang of 8 intelligence briefing in response to the balloon sighting.
I was actually at work and I was getting ready to leave for the day. And just a few minutes earlier, I'd seen some news reports of some airspace restrictions here in Billings. And so I thought that was a little suspicious. And I was looking out the window like I normally do, and I just happened to spot it out of the corner of my eye. And at first I thought it was a star, but I thought that was kind of crazy because it was broad daylight, and when I looked at it, it was just too big to be a star. Yeah, the report said it might be a Chinese balloon. It seemed so brazen and just so insane to me that anyone would even attempt to just push a balloon over the sky, because to me it was just like, this thing is so visible in the sky, but I guess it was high enough that some people might not see it, and I don't know. It was just really crazy to see. I think that it would be ridiculous if the government didn't retrieve it. I mean, obviously, I think that's the first course of action, is to get it out of the sky through whatever means they need to, and just retrieve it and investigate its origin.
Well, as expected, more reactions have been pouring in over the suspected spy balloon. And this is regardless of the excuse that or the explanation that China has given and its apology. A defense expert believes the incident was either an untimely provocation ahead of the planned trip by the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, to Beijing. He says previous Chinese spy balloons had flown over the U.S. before, but this balloon had been loitering longer.
As we know, Secretary Blinken is slated to go to the People's Republic of China in the coming days. And this floating of a surveillance balloon over the United States is untimely. It's either a provocation on the part of the Chinese, It's a mistake. One part of the government doesn't know what the other part of the government is doing, or it's just a standard operating procedure. They have done this before, but it's not common, and the surveillance balloon is believed to be loitering longer than previous surveillance balloons that the Chinese have sent over. The size of it is estimated about kind of 3 bus lengths, and it's up in the stratosphere, which is above where commercial airlines travel. It may be loitering longer in certain places to surveil areas where the Chinese believe there are U.S. military installations, and by loitering longer, they can get higher resolution imagery, if indeed that's what they're doing. But it's not clear that it is going to see anything more of the United States that the Chinese satellites already see. So the timing is unusual and in many respects unfortunate. President Biden has talked about keeping lines of communication open to the Chinese government, and Secretary Blinken's trip to the People's Republic of China in the coming days was part of that effort. So this creates a complication for both the United States and China to discuss, and it's an unfortunate provocation.
Well, away from the spy balloon, but still in the United States, the U.S. President Joe Biden has called for government agencies to expand federal workers' access to paid and unpaid leave as he joins with former President Bill Clinton to mark the 30th anniversary of the 1993 Family and Medical Leave Act. The Family and the Medical Leave Act, the first Clinton signed after taking office, guarantees that certain workers may take up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave without losing their jobs or health insurance benefits. The law applies to public agencies, schools, and private sector employers with at least 49 employees. Mr. Biden signed a presidential memorandum urging federal agencies provide leave without pay for federal workers, including during their first year of service.
Everyone here understands the importance of being able to care for the people we love. On a personal note, when I was district attorney of San Francisco, my mother was diagnosed with cancer. And I spent many hours with her at the hospital and driving her to and from chemotherapy appointments. Fortunately, however, I had the type of job then where I could take the time I needed to be with my mother. But far too many others cannot.
One of the reasons I was so happy when he got elected president is I watched him spend 15 years, if that's what it took, to make the changes that we needed to make this country a better place to live. So I think we should remember that. I also think you should know, and Chris Dodd will tell you the same thing. After all these years, I still have more people mention the Family Leave Act to me than any other specific things I did.
Look, the legislation we celebrate today was an incredibly important step, but a first step. In the United States, still one of our only countries in the world that doesn't guarantee paid leave. One of the only countries in the world that doesn't. Look, as a result, 94% of our lowest wage workers, mostly women and workers of color, have no paid family leave at all, 94%. Meaning you can only take time to care for your loved one if you can afford to give up your salary. I remain committed to changing that and bringing the line with every single other major economy in the world by passing a national program of paid leave and medical leave. Folks, we got a lot of work to do, a lot of work, but I'm so happy to be able to welcome my president back to the United States Congress, back to the United States Capitol, and he's promised me that I'll be able to sit at my desk tomorrow. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.
Well, still at the White House, U.S. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, they've met with members of the Congressional Black Caucus there to discuss police reform one day after the funeral of Tyre Nichols. Mr. Biden said he talked with Nichols' family by phone, expressed hope that the dark memory of his case would spur action.
Tyre was buried, just laid to rest. Vice President went to the funeral. I spent time on the telephone with his mom and his stepfather. And, my hope is this dark memory spurs some action that we've all been fighting for. And although you just got to keep at it, I listened to Al Sharpton's eulogy, which I thought was first rate. And we got to just stay at it as long as it takes. The election this body, and got elected early on in spite of
the death of Tyre Nichols is yet another example of why we do need action, but you've already led on the action that we've been able to take through executive order. We need your help to make sure we can get the legislative actions that are necessary to save lives and to make public safety the priority that it needs to be for all communities.
Well, let's talk about the U.S. economy, where jobs reports and all economic indicators suggest that the U.S. should be able to avert a recession. Our Washington correspondent Maria Bird brings us this report.
The United States economy has in recent months experienced a slowing economy, increased inflation, unstable stock market, and major corporate layoffs. But despite what appears to be troubling economic times, the U.S. has proved in recent weeks that strategies are in place to reduce inflation and stabilize the economy.
Today, the FOMC raised our policy interest rate by 25 basis points. We continue to anticipate that ongoing increases will be appropriate in order to attain a stance of monetary policy that is sufficiently restrictive to return inflation to 2% over time. In addition, we are continuing the process of significantly reducing the size of our balance sheet. Restoring price stability will likely require maintaining a restrictive stance for some time.
The slowing down of interest rate hikes has been a part of the U.S. government's efforts to navigate very complex times.
But there's, a very global set of some uncertainties, particularly around the war in Ukraine. We're still dealing with supply chain disruptions, though those have improved in recent months. And, we went through a global pandemic that disrupted, many ways of life, and a lot of people lost their lives. And so I won't deny this has been a complex time. Inflation has been high, but we are seeing some signs of easing, particularly for households in the U.S., including the fact that real wages are now higher than they were 6 months ago. That's wages adjusted for the rate of inflation. We are seeing some cooling in inflation overall, with food, with the exception of eggs, starting to, at the grocery store, starting to see some price slowdowns. We're starting to see, a really, really significant fall in the price of gas, which is so important to so many Americans who have to drive to see family or go to work. And so, there are some real bright spots in this really complex economic environment. And I would say when it comes to the state of the labor market, the U.S. is in a very strong position.
Despite the everyday Americans' economic challenges, the unemployment rates have reached record lows in recent weeks.
The report that came out today on unemployment and job growth in the states, the economy is in a strong position. Non-farm payroll, which is another way of saying jobs in the private sector, grew in 32 states in December and the District of Columbia. The unemployment rate is at or below 4% in 38 states. A few states even saw record low unemployment rates, including Pennsylvania, South Dakota, and Alaska. And so on the whole, despite there being some concentrated layoffs in sectors that are very, very attuned to the state of the stock market, we are seeing an overall pretty strong job picture.
The instability of the U.S. economy has been an imminent threat for many American households, but efforts to stabilize the economy are signs that the U.S. may be headed to a stronger economic base. From Washington, Maria Bird, Channel Television News.
Over to South Korea's military, which said it conducted joint air drills with the U.S. involving stealth fighters today to boast the ability to mount joint operations amid North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. The South Korean Air Force said in a statement that the country carried out combined drills in the sky over the Yellow Sea with American F-16CM aircraft, F-22 stealth fighters, as well as F-35 jets from both countries. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin met his South Korean counterpart in Seoul on Tuesday and vowed to expand military drills and deploy more strategic assets such as aircraft carriers, long-range bombers to counter North Korea's weapons development and a war. One child has been killed and another gravely injured after being hit by a freight train in a town in western Germany, according to the Interior Minister of the German state of North Rhine-Westphalia, where the accident happened. The injured child was brought to hospital with life-threatening injuries. However, no further details about the child's age or gender were given. Emergency personnel were called to the scene near a former freight yard as police searched the tracks with flashlights and drones. And back here in Africa, a railing collapsed at a stadium in Sierra Leone, injuring children, where the president and first lady were distributing sanitary commodities. According to local media, crowds were seen rushing out of the stadium in the city of Bo, with many carrying people who appeared to be injured. The country's president, Julius Maada, has expressed concern on social media, saying, "My heart goes out to all children affected and the families of the kids that sustained injuries in the unfortunate incident at the Bo Stadium." He adds that medical team are working diligently to administer medical attention to the injured. However, the number of casualties was not immediately clear. Still to come on the program. Colombia aims for cleaner environments by going carless for a day. We'll bring you details when we return. Peruvian President Dina Boluarte has put forward a new bill to bring elections forward to 2023 in a bid to calm protests around the country, as a fractured Congress has repeatedly failed to come to an agreement after weeks of political infighting. The bill proposes holding congressional and presidential elections in October this year, with elected officials taking part late December. Elected officials would serve a 5-year term until July 2028. The new bill comes after a series of early election proposals, after those early election proposals failed in Congress.
¡Viva el Perú!
We're back in Africa, where the United Nations and humanitarian partners have launched an appeal for $751 million to meet the urgent needs of 5.7 million people, over half of whom are women and children in Mali. According to Associate spokesperson Florencia Nino Martinez, the appeal aims to mobilize the necessary funding for the Humanitarian Response Plan 2023 for the country.
We and our humanitarian partners launched an appeal for $751 million to meet the urgent needs of 5.7 million people, over half of whom are women and children. The launch was hosted by the government of Mali and co-chaired by the UN Humanitarian Coordinator, Alain Nudehu. The appeal aims to mobilize the necessary funding for the Humanitarian Response Plan 2023 for the country. Mali faces a multidimensional crisis fueled by insecurity, conflict, climate change, and lack of access to basic social services. As of December, over 400,000 people, mainly children and women, have been displaced due to increasing insecurity in the regions of Bandiagara, Mopti, Gao, Timbuktu, Segu, and Menaka. Our colleagues say that humanitarian needs have increased by 17% compared to last year.
Well, she was also updating the situation in Ethiopia, saying that since the cessation of hostilities agreements mid-November, more than 127,000 portions, or rather tons of food, have been brought into Tigray, reaching more than 3.8 million people. She added that access to the north continues to improve.
Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that access in the north continues to improve, and we have expanded our operations in Afar, Amhara, and Tigray regions. But some pockets remain hard to reach. Since the cessation of hostilities agreement in mid-November, more than 127,000 tons of food have been brought into Tigray, reaching more than 3.8 million people. Meanwhile, our humanitarian colleagues note that fighting in parts of southern Amhara and neighboring areas of Oromia region have led to significant displacement in Amhara's North Shewa, South Wello, and West Gojam zones. Humanitarian partners are mobilizing food, shelter, and other relief to people in need. Given the scale of the needs, additional funding is critical. Financial requirements for this year are being finalized and expected to remain high. Last year, the Ethiopia Humanitarian Appeal received less than half of the $3.3 billion that are required. We and our partners aim to reach 17 million people with food, water, health, and agriculture support, among other assistance. Our humanitarian colleagues also note that the cholera outbreak in parts of Oromia and Somali regions has seen more than 1,000 cases reported to date. Close to 1 million people are considered at high risk. An oral cholera vaccination campaign has been launched, and 33% of the people they intend to assist have been reached so far.
We're now in South Africa, where the ongoing power crisis has affected business across the country. It is also taking a toll on everyday life by impinging on the country's water processing and distribution networks, triggering public outrage over the water shortages.
The South Africa-run utility, Eskom, has intensified its load-shedding exercise since the beginning of this year, leaving customers without electricity for up to 6 hours in a day. The impact of the worsening crisis on the water system has caused a number of cities and towns, including Johannesburg and Nelson Mandela Bay, to grapple with drastic water cuts. Businesses are also becoming increasingly frustrated.
I'm losing clients because of water problem. Because at times the water will not even come. Then at times it will be coming very slowly. Very, very slowly. It really affects us.
Now you can't even flush, you can't cook, you can't do anything. You can't go to the toilet, you can't even bath. Can you imagine? You are smelling inside a taxi.
Some experts are warning of a full-blown water crisis in South Africa, citing the poor condition of some water infrastructure.
Our infrastructure, first of all, is dilapidated. It hasn't been maintained for over 2 decades, so that obviously plays a role. We have major water leaks as well as bursting pipes, so that contributes to your non-revenue water, which is physically lost water. Over 40% of that water it's treated water, it's drinkable water, that gets lost between the reservoir towards the consumer.
Reservoirs in the city of Johannesburg are also running dry due to low rainfall and heat wave conditions. Water tanks are being placed across the city as the water cuts become more frequent. However, with the tanks servicing hundreds of people at a time, experts are calling for more action in what they describe as a dire situation.
Wherever you find yourself, resilience, hard work, integrity, passion and purpose will set you apart. This is the view of Nigerian-American emergency medicine specialist, the newly appointed Chief Medical Officer at Jersey City Medical Center, Dr. Ijoma Akunyili. While speaking with Ijoma Onyato, the daughter of former Director General of NAFDAC, late Professor Dora Akunyili, says Nigerians are resilient people, and that is what sets them apart, regardless of where they are.
I will tell young people, whether it's the United States or in Nigeria, wherever you find yourself, and this was something my mom would tell me, she's like, you cannot ever give up. And for every yes you get, you probably will have 20 no's, but you need to set your sights on what you want to achieve, have your passion, have your North Star and your integrity, and It only takes one door to open for you. What I learned from my parents, and that's the greatest legacy I carry of the name Akunyili, is that we are all greater than ourselves, our individual stories, our individual lives, the things we want, and we should reach outside of ourselves to do something bigger for society. Nigeria is a beautiful country, and I think there's opportunities to give back, not just give back to the Nigerian society here in the United States, but to give back in multiple ways, whether it's through transfers of knowledge, of information. And life is not static. People work in different places at different parts of their life. So I think the Nigerian diaspora needs to be celebrated as in multiple forms. And, you just don't think of it as a one-time story. In the greater scheme of history, I think the Nigerian diaspora brings a lot of richness to the country.
You can catch the full interview with Dr. Ijeoma Akunyili. Watch Diaspora Network on Saturday at 7:30 p.m. And finally on the program, drivers in Bogota left their cars at home yesterday, finding alternative means of getting around as part of a campaign to encourage cleaner forms of transportation during the Sustainable Mobility Week. The streets of the normally bustling Colombian capital were quiet as an estimated 1,850,000 privately owned vehicles and 430,000 motorbikes that pack the streets daily were left in their parking spaces, contributing to the reduction of the carbon footprint produced by fossil fuels. Some people opted for riding bikes in Bogota, which has an extensive network of paths first installed to ease traffic and pollution. The drivers there have been asked to leave their cars at home dozens of times before in years gone by. According to Bogota's Environment Secretariat, the car-free day reduces the particulate matter of the city by 57%, the particulate, and avoids emitting 7,600 tons of CO2. Well, lots of travel distance, but isn't that amazing? That's our program for the week. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker.